Blog Talk Radio.
This lion, he's the king of the jungle. Huge mane out there. He's laying down under a tree in the middle of Africa. He's so big. He's so hot. He doesn't want to move. Now, the little lion comes. They start messing with him. Biting his tail, biting his ears. He doesn't do anything. The lioness, she starts messing with him. Coming over, making trouble. Still, nothing. Now, the other animals, they notice this. And they start to move in. The jackals, hyenas, they're barking at him, laughing at him. They nip his toes and eat the food that's in his domain. They do this, and they get closer and closer and bolder, till one day, that lion gets up and tears the shit out of everybody, runs like the wind, eats everything in his path. Because every once in a while, the lion has to show the jackals who he is.
And welcome to another episode of Paintball Unfiltered. I'm Lawrence Wright, also known as TB. I'm about to bring on a good friend of mine. I've known him for a very long time, Alan Indy Martin. For those of you that are aware, and haven't talked to Indy in a while, it'll be nice to hear him talking about scenario paintball again. For those of you that don't know who he is, I mean, some of the stuff he'll touch on, but where I really knew him from was one of the staff writers for Viper, the staff writer for the longest time. Also one of the co-creators of the RTS format. A lot of the coding and back-end stuff of Viper and some of the more intricate storylines were directly because of Indy's involvement. Always a really smart guy, somebody I respect as a player, especially as a brain and very much as a role player. We'll talk about those particular things as we go on, so let me go ahead and bring him on. Hey Indy, are you there?
What's up?
Hey, what's going on, man? Awesome.
Oh.
So, I'm sure you heard the intro a little bit, and, you may or may not know that, you're just like Nudie. You're one of these guys that I respect in the game, and the things that you can do that I've seen you do. I've certainly taken things that I've seen you do on the field and use them for my own enjoyment years after, you had left the sport. So, welcome to the show. And want to get started, man. Tell everybody, how you got started in paintball.
Oh, man. So to preface it, we got to say this is over half my lifetime ago. It's 2018 now. I'm 37. It's 16 years old when I first played. It was rec ball, Brazos survival games on the southwest side of Houston.
Right. And what was Brazos known for? I mean, I'm going to try to, stop you from time to time because we've got to give people a frame of reference because what I've found is that a lot of the more popular people that are known in this sport right now started playing paintball in 2007, 2008, 2010. So some of these places and things they wouldn't understand. So what was Brazos known for, even though you played rec ball there?
Brazos was known for being the first place really to have scenario games that wasn't in, up northeast and in Florida. That's where Viper got his start at because he played with Marion's Raiders out of Florida with Mother, who eventually married Pac-Man. Pac-Man owned Brazos, and I just started playing rec ball there, and I ended up becoming one of the referees there. And eventually, the very first game I played
when Viper
there
was the field manager,
Zone.
because Patrick was the owner, but Viper was actually the field manager.
Well, see, I never met Viper at first. He wasn't there, but people talked with him with this weird kind of cult-like mentality. You know what I'm talking about that goes on in scenarios. Cultish vibe now, very much in hindsight.
Right.
But yeah, it was Viper this and Viper that. And the first time I ever played rec ball where Viper played, I was a noob who didn't know anything, and I shot him out on my first game. So I was like,
right.
Okay. But yeah, that was a great field, and it's typical Houston for you people who've never been here. It's a bayou that runs through it, and it's kind of like a bent Y shape, So you've got 100 acres. You've got a lot of territory on one side of the bayou. You've got this triangle-shaped island, and then you've got everything that's more interior. And all that stuff, the interior stuff still exists today that you could go play on right now.
Right. And then the other
so
thing is that when it wasn't a paintball field, it was a damn cow field. And so there were fences and gates that you had to control as well. So there were natural choke points on the field, and then with the bridges, especially if the bayou was full, if you didn't have the bridges, you were going through 3 foot of water, easy.
Yeah, you don't know. You got hurt by a bridge, but you don't know sketchy. Well, you know the BSG bridges, and they were sketchier than the bridges that got you by far.
Right.
And the whole field is covered in cow shit.
Yep.
Just fucking everywhere. But if the rains had come,
but a very interesting field. I mean, it was really interesting because of the way the bayous played. It was almost like playing on either a pipeline, which was cool about the Blacklands field, or playing like on an electrical right of way, because you had these big long lanes flanked on either side by woods.
Far and away, when you look at the whole thing as one complete scenario field, it's one of the most balanced fields that you've ever played in your life. No matter what side you started on, it was 50-50. Mm-hmm. It was never questioned.
Yeah, because I generaled that field as Captain Hook, and I was in the island. I was in the pirate ship that Spanish Inquisition built.
Yeah, the island base was a great base. We ended up playing out of there because the next game, the way I first met Viper was through T-Rev 3. And for those who don't know, there was never a T-Rev 1 paintball game because the original Texas Revolution was shit that happened in Texas,
Right.
Alamo, shooting up at Brazos.
And then T-Rev 2 was NWO, so it was like Texas seceding again.
Yeah, that was either 1995 or 96. I didn't play that game. My first game was Twilight Zone 2 in 1997, and then what they had done was create these weird wooden pyramids all over the field, and they were covered in all these weird runes. And then somebody from a team that nobody's probably heard of at this point called the Dog Soldiers, which were a really great team led by a guy named Choctaw, tons of experience.
And they were all Native American. They were all Native American. Yeah. No, they were. They were all Native American. Oh, okay. You had to have Native American in you to be on the team.
Well,
and they wore tie-dyed jerseys. Those tie-dyed jerseys, dude.
They were not tie-dyed yet at the time.
Right.
But one of them on the team had broken the goddamn language that was written on all these pyramids. Like, he went to every pyramid on the field, wrote down every symbol, and then literally worked out what the language was and what all the messages went. I still don't know what they meant. However many years later, I have no idea. 21 years later, don't know what was on those stupid pyramids, but that guy does.
Right.
That was my first real introduction to night play. We actually went, and they stood us down at 3 a.m., and there were still at least 100 people that came off the field. First time I saw night vision on use, I saw it with somebody on Blitzkrieg. Ferret, I'm sure you know him, who had the armored vehicle.
Awesome. Yeah, most people don't realize that in that time there was an actual British Ferret tank. I mean, it was a wheeled tank, so it wasn't tracked.
Yes.
But Austin had actually, Blitzkrieg had been co-sponsored by Tippmann, I think, because he actually had working Tippmann's as a coaxial gun, and then on top of the tank, and then they had changed the main breech to where it would fire sabot rounds, the paint balls wrapped in toilet paper crap. Yeah. And so it was an actual functioning tank, but a lot of the people don't know that Austin was a federal Type 3 dealer and holder, so he had all kinds of shit back at his house, all kinds of tanks, all kinds of machine guns, everything else.
When that tank showed up 3 years later, it had a completely different turret. They had fabricated from scratch an actual enlarged armored vehicle turret specifically for paintball, so it was more comfortable to light people up from.
Oh yeah.
It was a welding work of art if you ever got to see it.
It was a vicious little thing.
Yeah. So we can fast forward a little bit. After Twilight Zone 3, I don't remember what game it was. I refed one, and that's where I really got an inside look at scenario games. And I got to play for the original Texas Ultimate Referee Z. And if you never got to referee with Z or play with Z, you missed out. You're never going to get to it.
Bill McClure.
Bill McClure. Bill
Yep.
McClure.
He actually also owned Paintball Max with Q. Or he owned Paintball Max and Q worked for him. Yeah. But, I mean, Z was on Blitzkrieg. Z was one of the guys who joined Blitzkrieg right after they founded it. He was big in the Houston scene. Lots of people.
He was a freak of nature.
Oh, yeah.
He could literally just run through the middle of the night. It's pitch black. I'm hitting everything I see, and he just goes running by, just full speed like it's daylight. It made no sense whatsoever. Just none. But he was a lot of fun to play with. And if we fast forward a little bit, kind of how I met Viper the first time came the next Texas Revolution 3. Now, that was Warcraft, based on the original video game. So what I ended up doing on that was I cut him a deal that if he would give me a roll card for the other team and some explosives and stuff, then I would make him an awesome map for the game. He tried to pay me money. I said, nope, don't want your money. Don't want free entry. I want roll card for the other team because I'm going to go screw them up. Because at this point, I joined a team named Guilty, and Guilty was composed entirely of young people, referees, and locals that played DSG, and that was it. Right.
Because back in that day, really, they had this whole thing where if you refed one, you played one. So if you refed a 24-hour game, then the next 24-hour game you showed up at, you got a case of paint, entry, and air, all on the promoter. And so there was that incentive to ref because you had a built-in free ticket to the next game.
Right. And, well, here's what I didn't know anything about this yet. And these are back in the days. People don't understand that back in the day, the reason that we had Team Guilty was because our team captain, Bruce Motes, was the general of the Orcs. And he needed base security. He needed 30 or 40 bodies that could form a permanent perimeter for 24 hours around this base and not let anybody in that wasn't supposed to be in. And you had to do this. And if you didn't have a large team that could run security, you weren't going to general. I mean, if you did, you were just going to be slaughtered because you had to have permanent base security. There were spies. There was embedded on your side. There was all kinds of crazy stuff. There was a pyrotechnist guy. What the hell was his name? Six. You remember Six?
Yep. Oh, yeah, Six. Six was another guy. He was actual EDT, Ordnance. He actually did that in the military, and he actually did it for, I want to say there was a SWAT team or something, but, I mean, he was still active, explosive ordnance disposal and all that. So, yeah, I mean, he was known, very well known in Texas for the whole nighttime flares, nighttime smoke, pyrotechnics of any kind that Viper put into his game. And then he actually went and did MXS for a while. And the last time I saw Six was actually at the first Viper VIP game in Sherwood. Six brought out all of his actual simulators that they trained people on. So they had real bomb simulators out there that scenario players had to disarm or figure out what to do. And then Six was that he actually brought artillery simulators. So he was out there, setting off artillery simulators and all kinds of other explosive ordnance that at a normal scenario game you couldn't have because you'd have refs doing it. And in this instance, you had a certified, tech trainer out there using it, and so it passed the insurance.
Yeah, well, I'm fairly certain he never had state licenses, but whatever. So,
look, he was still a police officer with the shit, so maybe, back in the day, it probably took a couple $100 to grease somebody, and you'd have been good in Texas.
Well, there was a couple crazy things that happened at that game. That was the first time I ever got patted on the head by Mother for doing good in a game, because I was playing security, and Six tried to come to our base, and I wouldn't let any motherfucker pass my point, And he complained to Mother, and Mother just patted me on the head and said, "Good job." And,
right.
So, but that was how the Geno caper got started. And for those who don't know, the way that Viper met Geno, let's just call him Geno, Spiro the Black Cat Mamalingus, I don't even know how to pronounce his damn last name, even though he's my homeboy, was Mother and Pat had gotten Viper all worked up that this great, very legendary player was coming to the game. So Spiro's calling him from fake phone numbers and cell phones on the way there saying, oh, yeah, I got broke down. We're not going to make the game. Sorry, blah, blah, blah. Well, Spiro's already there on the property while he's making these phone calls. And he's got 2 people with him who've never actually played a scenario game before. So the very first thing that happens is me with my shiny, awesome, completely legit roll card to walk onto the other side and do whatever I want is taken from me and given to Spiro. Oh, I'm sorry, Gino, because I don't know his real name. I'm just told his name Gino.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to hand over my roll card and all of my bombs. Well, Gino set about absolutely destroying the other side. He ended up becoming their de facto XO. He orchestrated general kills. He ran off with their missions. He slaughtered them. And the whole time, Viper has no idea he's even on the field or even in the entire state of Texas.
Right.
And he didn't find out until the big reveal at the end, and I was like, oh, damn, that was pretty clever.
Right.
So, because
what a lot of people don't understand these days is that there used to be a time when the game, when the genre was still relatively new, when you had everybody kind of
media.
Right. Well, not just that though, but the only time these people dealt with each other at a national level was at the Wayne Dalek games that were 2 or 3 a year. And so that's how the Northeast interacted with Florida, and that's how the Texans, because Viper would take a big or Viper and Patrick and Diane would take a big contingent from Texas and go play the Dalek games in Florida. And because of that, and because Diane, started as a staff member of Wayne and writing games for Wayne, and Blitzkrieg and Patrick and Viper started in Florida, playing for Wayne under Diane and all of that. All these people knew each other, and as they developed their own companies, they were still they weren't competitive in a super negative way, although a lot of the shit they did was super negative to each other. When it first started out, it was just kind of like gentle ribbing, and they would try to one-up each other, and there was this whole community, like somebody we're going to talk to in a couple weeks, Bobby Goglin, somebody we're going to talk to after that, Spiro, the guy you're mentioning, Spiro, Black Cat Mamalingus. They all one-upped each other at these games, and so when Viper had a scenario game going on, he knew who Spiro was. He knew what Spiro could do in a game, and he didn't want Spiro at his game because in his mind it would fuck it up because he was trying to do a different game than what Wayne did. Wayne's games were very much, if you could sell it to Wayne, it worked, no matter how crazy it was. I mean, there's stories out there, that's where the whole term Magic Tree came from, was a Wayne Dalek game that somebody walked under this tree, and because they walked under this tree, they got like 500 points and tied the game, and then they won the final battle. I mean, that used to be the joke. The running joke was it didn't matter what you did during the game. Before the final battle, the game's going to be tied. Right.
So you always had this kind of regional tribalism going on, and the way it was explained to me was that basically at the time, Florida was college-level play, and Texas was high school level.
Right.
Which I guess would be fair.
And the Northeast was included in Florida because that's where Wayne did his games primarily, was at Skirmish and then his field.
Well, I spent the whole game at TRF3 either running security or I would go into the office with Viper and he would say, hey, do this, like chop up some cards or something on the old chopping block there. And then I would just, take some bomb cards and leave. And then I would give him a Spiro and I would go back to base security. And then
that's really the reason why that's the reason why they came up with the Gino character, though, was because he didn't want Spiro at the game. And he was stressing Spiro coming to the game, and that was why Spiro called him and said, hey, I'm not coming to the game, I can't make it, all this other stuff. And, I mean, the other thing is he never took his mask off. He's kept his mask on all the time. He didn't really – so nobody really talked to him. And he he altered his – accent in such a way because he's very pronounced, from New Jersey. I mean, you can tell he's from fucking the Northeast. But
well,
I mean,
but he got away with all
just
this shit because I was the face of his caper. I would go in there and get all of his stuff. He never had to go to Viper, and I didn't know better. I just did it, and it all worked out, and it became awesome. But the big sea change in Texas paintball scenario phase of it was at the end of the game, where Pac-Man had just sold the field to a guy named Mark who played tournaments, and Mark was supportive.
Who eventually, I think, sold it to Keith Kaminsky, right?
Yes.
Yeah, because Keith is still playing. Actually, Keith actually plays. I think he plays with MDP now or something like that. I just saw some pictures of him or something, where he's still like out running fields and playing those. Because Tank owns BSG now, John Tankersley.
Oh wow. Yeah, I've met Tank a few times. Yeah, you don't want to be on the bad end of Keith. He's a great player. He was a great player then. I'm sure he's a master now.
Oh yeah.
What happened was Mark had grabbed some of his teammates, his tournament teammates, and they went out there during the final battle opposite of the side that Pac-Man was on. And they were using they were losing. They were losing the game really bad, and he went and played for the humans. And they ran trains down this road right through the town field where the final battle was taking place, where one person stands in the front and starts running, and all the people behind him run and shoot. And the guy who's in front just takes a lot of hits and keeps running straight. So by the time he finally breaks off like a hit player, they've made an extra 30 yards down the field.
Right.
And,
Which is that was a woods ball tournament tactic back in the day. I mean, that was what they did. Was you basically lined up and ran, and as the refs pull people, you just got smaller and smaller because you're running head on into a group of people.
Oh yeah, and Pac-Man went fucking berserk over it, and they're in a screaming match in the parking lot, and Pac-Man gets banned from the field that he built because he can't control his temper over a tournament tactic. It was cheesy, and it didn't help him, and they couldn't have won the game with it, but still, insane screaming match.
Right. And what people don't understand is there's a reason why. I mean, because I have people all the time tell me, you take the game too serious, and it's just like, you don't understand. It's a different animal. I mean, everybody's social. Everybody gets along. I mean, we argue, but it's like playing. It's like playing Monopoly. You know what I'm saying?
Trust me, we're going to get back to this because we're going to talk about what I did to you in whatever Centerville or wherever the hell we were at. About halfway through this timeline. Because, the look on your face.
Are you talking about the fucking mummy game or the werewolf game where I'm king of the werewolves?
Whatever crap that was. You know what? I just showed up on the spot and had to do some shit, but we'll get to that.
Yeah, and jumped out the coffin. Is that what you're talking about when you jumped up out the coffin and bullshit?
Yeah.
Or are you talking about a completely different game?
No, that was the same game.
Yeah.
So shortly
right
after
outside of Huntsville.
Warcraft. Yeah, whatever that was. So shortly after that game, two of our team members, it was Columbine it happened, and two of our team members got arrested for possession felony of explosives. Because you know how you put like bleach in a 2-liter bottle and throw some aluminum on it and put on the cap and it goes pop?
Yep.
Yeah. Turns out that counts the same as if you had a giant block of C4 as far as the law is concerned.
Yes. There's other things too, that make homemade explosives that if they catch you on, if they're mixed together, then it's not a good thing.
Yeah, well, science experiments.
Don't get me wrong. I've heard rumors. I don't think it's ever happened, but supposedly there were ATF members who've showed up at paintball games for paintball silencers. There's been so many ups and downs. I mean, I've never read a magazine article about it. I've never read a newspaper about it. It's all just been this kind of.
Because we talked about six a minute ago, and a gag they used to run before the game. Because the thing back in the day was they used to just randomly scatter pods filled with paint around the field. And you would come across one and be like, awesome, I just got free 200 rounds or whatever. But what they would do before the game six was at, had prizes, prize tags, all kinds of crap to redeem. But what they would do, they would bring six on stage, and he would pull out this pod, and when you opened it, it had like 6 paintballs on the front, and then it looked like it had a little explosive and behind it and a battery and a switch. And they would scare everybody in the crowd with it. Oh, you might accidentally blow up the paint, so be careful what you grab. Total bullshit. That thing was a completely fake prop. But the story played awesome every time, and everybody believes it for the most part. Just fun stuff from back in the day that I haven't seen them do in, 15 years at least?
Right. Well, they do it in airsoft now.
Yeah.
I mean, and a lot of the cool technology that we'll talk about later, you know, that you were involved in and I was involved in with you and stuff, all that shit's gone to airsoft now. I mean, you know, it is what it is. Yeah. Not even the milsim people keep it really. So.
10 years ago I said that's exactly what was going to happen. So by the time we hit 1998, we're at the last 12 hour at BSG before Viper can move off, and that is the first time I saw somebody get done super dirty. And and that's when I didn't know it yet, but that's when I discovered that the 3-punch rule, complete bullshit. All it is a license to foul people twice before you get in trouble. You get a stern talking to. That got reinforced at my very last game too, on one of your own teammates getting done dirty in much the same way. So I'm gonna name the name too. If you don't know who Chuck No is, Chuck No is the only person on the planet who's probably played more games than TB.
Yeah,
probably a fair.
I can say that for sure.
Well, Chuck's
been playing a very, very long time. The other thing about Chuck is Chuck was a complete. Chuck was known as the greatest sport ever. He was a complete consummate sportsman. I mean, nobody ever got an unkind word out of Chuck. Nobody ever saw Chuck lose his temper.
Impossibly nice.
Except this one time when he said "fuck you, TB" on the paintball field and walked off.
Awesome, nice.
So
often
because I had 2 medics in a bunker that he was trying to get me out of. And while he's trying to get me out, he's Pants is on one side and Brooks is on the other side with their tournament ramping guns.
Oh, yeah. They were good players.
Trying to get him out, and he wants me really bad. And every time he hits me, he'll go, "Hey, you hit left hand." I'm like, "Yeah, I know, medic." And he would just start cussing. And then after about 10 minutes or so of this, he got hit, and he finally said, "Fuck you, TB," loud enough that everybody just started laughing and walked off. And he was
very funny.
And that's what Viper remembers is that and he used that later on in his ban of me, is that I even made Chuck No be unsportsmanlike.
If that were a Steam achievement, you would have earned it. So
maybe it should have been. Maybe that's what we need. Is you need little patches like how many people have you pissed off in a game? Who's a notable guy that you got over on?
Yeah, I told you I could have done achievements in the software, and we could have made that then pretty easily. So back in the day, the noobs from this generation aren't going to know this. But back in the day, they had actual fucking spies. Like, that dude standing next to you on your own paintball team might not be on your side of the game. He might be there to screw you. And
or your brother.
Austin, no. Yeah.
Or your brother.
Austin.
Your actual brother could be the spy. I saw that in Georgia. That destroyed a team because the spy was this dude's brother who wasn't in a command position, but because it was his brother, he was just like, blood is thicker than water, and, told his brother everything that was going on. And, I mean, when they announced who the spy was, because his brother never got made. And and there were several times they almost made him, but the fact that he was his brother is the only thing why he didn't accuse him of being the spy.
Wow.
And so when it came out,
public service announcement.
Dude, oh yeah.
I got my PSA for this segment real quick. Do not take things that happen in the middle of a game personally after the game. If you're mad halfway through the game, fight them all the way to the end of the game. When the end of the game happens, high five. Wait for the next. Just get on with your life because that guy might be on your side the next time, and you can be loyal teammates. And taking that
laugh
kind of
about
shit
it, and joke that you got.
Up.
When you get done, just like when you watch somebody slip on a banana peel. I mean, that dude didn't like slipping on a banana peel. He thought it embarrassed him. He turned red. But 3 years from now, y'all are sitting around drinking. You're like, you remember that time you slipped on a banana peel? And he's like, fuck yeah, I busted the shit out my ass. And y'all laughed your fucking asses off. It becomes a joke. It becomes a shared experience. And it seems like a lot of people have their egos wrapped up in it, even though they claim they don't. And so when they get spanked or they get taken advantage of, they take it personal. I mean, and take on real-world problems. When somebody's calling somebody, threatening to come beat their ass because, you tricked them out of a prop, that's a fucking problem, dude.
That's what happened at this 12-hour. My teammate was generaling. And I had at the game with me my best friend. It's the only scenario game he's ever played. And we showed up, and we were kind of floating between both sides because we were the UN observers. But my actual guilty teammate was a general for one of the sides. And then Austin makes his move, kills the general. Shit goes berserk. Him and Chuck are on the Outlaw crew, a very well-known Texas team, huge numbers of them.
And they were the Outlaw crew, and most of them were law enforcement. The team captain was the sheriff of one of the counties. So, I mean, these were like really, they didn't do spies. That was their big claim. They didn't do spies. They were 100% loyal. They were all law enforcement or associated with law enforcement. So they always felt that they were very above board, honor, and all of that. And so, when Austin turned out to be the spy, it got really bad.
They took it personally. They ripped the shirt off his back. They lit him up as he walked away for like 100 yards. Nobody got judge punched. No judge intervened to try to help him. Nothing happened except for Austin got lit the fuck up. And that's like probably the dirtiest I saw somebody get done until I saw what happened to Paco.
Even worse than Casper?
That was worse than Casper. It was definitely worse than Casper. There was at least 14 guns shooting him for 100 yards. No. I saw what happened to Casper.
Yeah, you're right. He wasn't shooting from 100 yards. He was about 2 foot off of him with his knee in his back.
Yeah, but there's not 30 of them.
No, because everybody else was standing there with their mouth wide open going, holy shit, I can't believe he's doing that. And then everybody was like, oh, well, it's Casper. And then, the ref going.
Well, look, I'm the only living witness to both, and what happened to Austin was worse.
I'll take your word for
it. They didn't rip the shirt off Casper. I'm just saying. So, and nothing happened.
Well, that's because you wouldn't let him.
It never happened after the game. I didn't even go over there. I stayed 50 yards away when that happened.
Right.
I just shot the person who was shooting Casper because I'm like, God damn it, that dude's on my side, and I need points. And then we go on to Twilight Zone 3, man. This was when Viper was moving away from BSG because all of the fallout with what happened to Pac-Man and Mark. With Pac-Man banned,
because most people don't realize that Pac-Man of MXS originally owned 50% of Viper Paintball.
I didn't even know that. Huh.
Yes. Pac-Man fronted Viper. And that was the reason why, for the longest time, Viper could not separate himself from Pac-Man after all of that. Like, after MXS started, Patrick still owned Viper Paintball. That's why GSRP happened. There was a lot of times when you this will fill in the blanks. When you had times where you asked him and you're like, dude, why are you letting Pac-Man do that? And he would just say, well, because of this or that. And you would just go, that doesn't make any fucking sense. It's because Pac-Man owned the company. How the fuck do you kick somebody out that owns the fucking company? It was actually after, I'm trying to think, there was a big game that Viper had, and I don't remember which one it was, when he paid the last of the money to Patrick and bought Patrick completely out of Viper. And that was when he stepped away from the GSRP and went more down the path that he went down, was after that. Was after he finally convinced Patrick to let him buy him out.
If anybody doesn't know how psycho this relationship between these two was, they were best men at each other's wedding. And then they set about eventually trying to destroy, well, one, I don't know what order they set out to destroying each other, but it happened. So,
yeah, it did. I mean, in the end, that's exactly what happened. The tragedy of, instead of Darth Plagueis the Wise, it's the tragedy of Viper, Diane, and Patrick.
Yeah, and we're going to get more to that in a minute because we're still on fucking 1998. We've only made it 2 years.
Yeah, you haven't even met me yet. I haven't even played my first game. I didn't play till 1999.
We're still a good year or two away from that. And what had happened was, okay, so we're going to go to Twilight Zone 3. Viper has left BSG. He's going to a place called Cut and Shoot. Cut and Shoot is east of Conroe. And we played
it's an actual town called Cut and Shoot.
Yeah, literally a place called Cut and Shoot, and it was also.
And why did they call it Cut and Shoot? Right, but do you know why they called it Cut and Shoot, right?
No clue. I just know that was where the field of that place was.
Yeah, the town of Cut and Shoot was founded based on the fact that it was full of bordellos and bars for the ranchers out in that area. And so that actually got to be known as the place where you cut and shoot. So it became that. Yeah, it's one of those goofy fucking stories.
Prior to the game, I go over to Viper's house with my team captain Bruce, his brother, and we go in, and I see James Flash Peterson there. He's writing cards. And I looked at the watermark and went, oh, I can make that. And so I went off at work the next day, and I started redrawing it from scratch. Michelle said she painted it. I don't think that was necessarily true. I think because I found a pretty similar graphic online. My only problem was with my forgery was that I actually had it mirrored. It was like a wizard or some shit, and it was holding a staff in one hand. I had it holding in the opposite hand, and my staff was a little shorter. And there were some blurry details. You could tell it was a forgery if you knew what you were looking for. But then we show up at Viper's house to help him get the stuff up to cut and shoot for the game. And guess who's there? Fucking Black Cat. The Spiro is back. So while Spiro is handing me the stuff to carry out to the car, he steals a bunch of cardstock.
Right.
Literally just takes it right out of the box and hands it to me and says, go hide this. So me, being a dumbass, runs off and goes and hides it. Well,
no, because again, people need to understand that, again, this kind of behavior was encouraged. It was expected. I mean, how many times did you sit and watch me that if you were the promoter and you got up out of your RV and you walked outside and left shit on the table,
you can't do that.
You wanted me to get it. That's why you left it there. You could sit and say, well, I didn't give it to him, and be completely honest, but, there's a reason they left it. Right.
Yeah.
Well, the funniest story, I'll tell you this real quick, because I don't think you've ever heard this. So of course, that Spiro is one of my mentors, one of the guys who taught me how to play paintball. One of the very first Black Cat games I did, I showed up at his game, and he's talking to his players, and by then I think he's done like 10 or 11 games. So he's got a following, and they've, every promoter had their own little core teams that kind of played those promoters and followed them around where they went. So you had, groupies, whatever, cult, however you want to phrase it. But there were people that enjoyed the product he was putting out, and so they played his games pretty religiously. As that happens, it's only human nature that once you get to know these people, you kind of give them leeway or help them out or let them be the choice role players or that kind of stuff, because you build this relationship with them.
Oh, I know.
So all these guys, they don't know me from Adam. They don't know that I know Spiro, and Spiro groomed me and taught me, and because I've never played one of his games. And so he's talking to all these people, and I just walked right up to the RV, and he had all of the props for the games in these 5 boxes. I just opened up the boxes and started going through all the props. But you don't do that at a Black Cat game. That's bad. That's bad to go through all the props. And I remember he looked at me and he's like, dude, what the hell? And I'm like, what are you talking about? And he goes, you just walk up to my RV and open up boxes and start going through my props? And I'm like, you taught me that, Spiro.
Dude, it's better to apologize for it later, because they can't.
Yeah, I'm like, you're the one who taught me to do this, that you just go as far as they'll let you go. They'll tell you when to stop.
Yeah, well, because of
so anyway, he took some card stock. I just didn't want people to go, oh, my God, he cheated. He took some card stock. Oh, my God, how horrible. It was horrible, but in the end, Viper laughed because, again, it's that thinking outside the box kind of stuff where you're fucking with people. Basically kind of like you're pranking them almost.
Yeah, here's where we're going to drop some more knowledge on the noobs. If you do not own a prop box, you are fucking up. A prop box is a giant fishing tackle box. It is going to be filled with everything that you could possibly use ever for fake currency, for fake props that you're going to use to kill people, that you're going to barter for. It's also going to be filled with every color of cardstock in the rainbow, because you're going to have to forge shit on a moment's notice. So in your RV, you should also have a scanner, printer combo, and a laptop. And these are all standard scenario items.
Oh, yeah.
That's just scenario one-on-one.
It's part of the reason why for the longest time there was this arms race between players and promoters. That's where the watermark came from in cards.
Yeah.
It's where the ref signature came from. It's where a lot of innovations came from, how the infrastructure worked, was because of players having card stock, being able to print their own things, bringing in fake props. I mean, there was a constant arms race between promoters and players because a long time ago, long time ago these days, it wasn't just you versus the other players. It was both of y'all against the promoter.
Oh, yeah. Well, it gets more screwed up than that because Spiro hands me this card stock. And I flip through it, and in the middle is an actual unprinted roll card for the other side. And he doesn't know what's in there. And I see it. I think he knows it's in there. I run off with it to another team's trailer on our side who are all compact techs. And we start printing up the enemy's cards, like, for free in the camper on the spot. And then he takes one, Black Cat takes one of these cards and waves it in front of Michelle because he thinks it's my forgery. He wants to see if it passes muster. So he runs it across the person who allegedly drew the watermark. And she sees it as perfect replica, freaks out. Spiro chunks me under the bus and sends me in there to get yelled at by Viper for stealing cardstock.
Right.
And that's kind of really how we met Viper. And then he ended up buying a paper shredder because he thought I was going through his trash, which I would have
Again,
done.
was a very viable scenario tactic back in the day. Nudie and I actually talked about that at the last game.
Yeah, you don't know what those promoters are throwing out. Everything game-related is in their garbage, and you should go collect it if you want to win. This is just scenario 101 again. So,
yeah, because they would always use red and blue, and you would be surprised at people. That's why I would tell people, when I accumulated the book of TB, and I would tell people, it's like, look, if you're on base security, and even if you're not on base security, if somebody tries to show you a card, and out of the blue they're just like, hey, come check my card, come look at my card, it's like you need to read that card, because I cannot tell you how many people they're on the blue side and they had red card stock, and there would the writing on there would actually be gibberish. There'd be nothing on it. It was just a red card.
Oh, yeah.
Because they didn't know the format or the watermark or whatever. They would just write a bunch of crap on it. And they would just, hey, I got a red card. Okay, cool, come on in. And then they'd get up close and shoot them or barrel tack them or whatever. And then they'd get mad and go, well, I let you up close. It's like, yeah, but you didn't read my shit. You didn't keep me under guard until you read that. I mean, I just found a red card and I was waving it at you. It's why the player ID, putting your player ID on a card became a mandatory thing.
Came later. You fuckers don't know how hard it was in the beginning. You have it so easy with your numbers and shit. Good God, it used to be so hard to run security. Like I said earlier, 30 people surrounding it. You have to scrutinize every single card because forgery was a common scenario skill. It just was.
Right.
And so we're at this Army of Darkness game, and I'm playing a character, and for whatever reason, their main role player thinks I'm kind of on a third party, even though I wasn't, and I just led him around by the nose, and he should have never have listened to me, and I don't know why he did. But it culminated in Black Cat engineering this weird ceremony that was not related to the scenario whatsoever, where we went off-field, woke their general up in his camper at 2 o'clock in the morning, put him onto the field. We made him go to the far side of it, insert through his base, walk all the way back to the front of the field, smoke tea leaves as part of the ceremony. Then they threw some holy water shit on him. And what he didn't know was he was killed by Tobacco, who was the enemy general in disguise.
Yeah.
And
y'all went and
Tobacco
woke the
is
general up,
currently
brought him
Viper's
on the
ultimate
field
rep.
so he could get assassinated.
Yeah. And we made him walk like 300 yards, smoke tea leaves, then we killed him. Literally, that was just shit that Spiro made up on the fly, and it all worked. So if you've never done that on a scenario game, you're not playing right. So that game goes through, and I end up winning the MVP on it because all the stuff I did, and that was kind of engineered by Spiro too because he felt like I deserved it, and I was pretty proud of that one. That was one of the better games I played. And when we roll around to the next cut and shoot game, which was based on heavy metal, which I got horribly ridiculed for, because I never watched the movie. I didn't know what the hell heavy metal was about. All I know is all of a sudden people are running giant Coke rails around the field and shit. Completely bizarre game. And that marked the last cut and shoot game because right before the next one, which was Austin Powers, the cut and shoot owner decided to extort Viper because they didn't have a written contract, and all of a sudden he wanted like double the money. And
he did that
Viper,
like the weekend before or like the Thursday or something before. I know it was like a very, very last minute thing from cut and shoot
it was 2 weeks before.
Right. And they had to find a field, and that's when they found
PBUSA, because I showed up an hour after it had happened, and Viper had like spiked his chair and destroyed it. You couldn't really blame him because this was some seedy shit. But the Paintball USA came through at the last second, and they brought Viper and I out for a weekend to play rec ball with some of their tournament players and stuff. That's when I discovered my love of swing ball. If you've never played a swing ball field, every bunker is a two-piece sheet of plywood on a center pivot. So the whole bunker can turn, and you can move your bunker and change your angles on the fly, and that is probably the most superior type of paintball I've ever played in my life. I fucking love swing ball, and I was really sad when it went away. But we were out there at the Austin Powers game. I don't even remember who the generals were. I know I was out there with Andrew Licht, who became one of the other staff writers, and it was Austin Powers, and we were the fashion police, and we were chasing people around the field with these rubber toy nightsticks and just beating them in the shins if they didn't have a costume on, like Cartman style, yelling, "Respect our authority." Right. And we would, if you were in costumes, you got prizes and paint and all kinds of shit. But if you weren't, you got the nightstick. And for some reason, nobody lit us up. Don't know why, because we were wailing on people with those squeaky toys. And then
this is after y'all had already started doing staph infection by then, right?
Nope, there was no staph infection yet. Staph infection didn't come along until
because you haven't hit StarCraft yet, so never mind. You're right.
No.
This is all previous to StarCraft. Yeah.
Yeah, there was a bunch of games. I don't even remember most of them. Like I said, over half my life ago. And I have to. This is painful. Not even painful to categorize it this way, but all of the paintball stuff isn't the important things that happened in my life. That all happened after paintball. Kids, planes, of course, my wife getting married and having kids. All the good stuff in my life happened after paintball.
Right.
Paintball is just a very serious hobby. So, and then Black Cat came into town, and we had this. If you've never seen old school scenario play applied to a date, Spiro is the one who showed me how to do that. I had to go talk this lady out of her car keys, steal her car, deliver her address, and then there was like a limo that picked her up later, and then I hid in a restaurant bar with him while she got in there, and it was the same ruse as T-Rev, where he wasn't there, I can't make it yet, and she's eating dinner, or she's eating her appetizer, and then when dinner's served, dinner for two comes out, and all of a sudden Spiro walks over and she starts crying, and then my team captain's girlfriend comes over playing the violin, and then we jumped back in the cars and then went down to Galveston, and then they ended up meeting us at the beach in a limo. Spiro's pimp. Let's not beat around the bush. That man knows what he's doing, and he applies all of the knowledge he had for scenario play to dating, and it turns out pretty awesome if you do. So not too long after that comes
That's because the quote
StarCraft.
Used to be, "It is always game on."
Yes. The game
and it is always setting you up. The game never
change.
ends. I'm always setting you up for the next ruse.
Yeah.
And you're setting me up, and one of us is gonna outdo the other.
And for fuck's sake, don't take it personally.
Oh yeah. Well, you couldn't. I mean, chains, boxes, and locks. I mean, I'm gonna talk about that with Goglin. I mean, that was the one time, or one of the few times that Viper and Pac-Man and then Blitzkrieg trolled Spiro hard as a player.
Nice.
Hard.
I mean, he deserved it.
Boxes, chains, and locks is a funny story. Bobby Goglin's going to tell that story. That's a funny story.
Good. Yeah, everything that Spiro did to people, he deserves back twofold. Let's just put it that way, even though I love him. Everything bad that happens to Spiro on the paintball field, I'm not going to feel bad about because I know he deserves it.
Right.
So we get to StarCraft, and all of a sudden, TB is not TB yet. TB is just some guy on the Terran side. And you're going to have to tell your part of the story in a minute. But we put a lot of planning into StarCraft. I did another map.
You were a staff member then, though, right?
Yes, I had been recruited after Heavy Metal to be on the staff. Right after the Heavy Metal game.
And you were really, really, really into strategy gaming, or RTS gaming, as it became to be known, real-time strategy. So you played the fuck out of StarCraft. Y'all would actually go over to Viper's house with your little computers and set them all up and play and talk shit about StarCraft and everything.
I took on Viper and every other staff member simultaneously in StarCraft and then beat them all in multiplayer.
Right.
One versus.
And so StarCraft was one of the
like
first games, I think, where you guys really tried to duplicate the feel of the video game. Everything from you had to go out and collect ore, you had ore carriers, you had base upgrades that were based on, laminated pictures from the game. So you built your base, and then you actually, as you added stuff to it, just like you would in the game, you had to collect enough ore and then buy it, and then you could upgrade your base.
Right.
And so if somebody dropped your base, they didn't necessarily – you didn't lose all your upgrades. They had to stand there and shoot the upgrade for X number of times until the rest said, yeah, that upgrade's destroyed, just like in the real video game.
Now, see, this is in hindsight, what we should have done is we should have run a test event, 12 hours, test all of the MOS and the concepts, and then tune them for the big show. But nobody knew better yet. So we had people that were the resource harvesters. You didn't want to fucking be a resource harvester. That shit sucked. It was just run over and then grab a resource and take it back to your base. But people were, let's just say, circumventing the rule a little bit because they would form chains and they would throw them to each other and then throw them all the way back to their base after it passed like 20 hands when you were supposed to get one and take it back to your base. So the resource farming went way faster than expected. Went way faster.
Oh, yeah.
They were draining the ore deposits.
It was also one of the first actual three-sided games. There were three full-side commanders each, and the game had not got to the point where people started taking shortcuts in the production, and it had to be quote-unquote equal. It wasn't equal. The Terrans had their own things. The Zerg had their own things. Whatever the fuck the other ones were, they had their... the Proton. I mean, you know what I'm saying? And because it wasn't necessarily balanced, you could actually take some of the tactics and do a Zerg push. Because you could redo they had the healing factor. They had all these little different healing things they could do, and to basically simulate being able to make really cheap people. You know what I'm saying? It was like
I could tell you exactly what didn't work out, because on the Protoss side, we put our resources into carriers. And what a carrier was, it was like a super helicopter. You put on a belt, and it had 8 dog leashes on it, and you could hand one out to a player. And every player that was attached to that leash was an air unit. So you could only be hit and killed by specially upgraded anti-aircraft units. But you could shoot ground targets. So the carrier was just a slow-moving Roomba of death. It would just blob its way around the field hosing people. The problem was once the sides started getting their upgrades and they started getting their anti-aircraft units, when you were getting shot up as the carrier, you couldn't tell who the hell was shooting you. Because if there's 50 guys and 10 of them are anti-aircraft units, it's still 50 guys shooting you, so how the hell do you know? So what I figured out late into the game was a hack where I grabbed Emmett from the Mayberry Marauders. And you had beef with Emmett later, but Emmett's still a buddy of mine. And Emmett is Richard McCullough, and he's just an all-around, very solid paintball player. Tall guy, very
Emmett
fast,
had more beef with me than I had with him. There are very few people in this industry or sport that I have a beef with outside of their beef with me. So if you come to me and you got a beef with me, then fuck you. But I don't really have a beef with you other than the fact you have a beef with me. That was it with Emmett.
Well,
Emmett had an attitude. Emmett didn't like me. Emmett had shit to say to me, and I basically told him eat a bag of dicks. And so because of that, Emmett and I did not mesh.
Oh, absolutely. He was definitely a hothead, because we'll talk about the fallout from another game in a little bit on that from Phobos. But what I did was I ran up behind him, and I just, instead of grabbing 7 dudes and moving like a stupid blob, I just clicked on one guy and I said, Emmett, go. And we literally tore ass across the field as fast as we could run. And I was a 145-pound track runner in high school running the mile, so I'm good to go. And he's monstrously fast. And the only thing where he can't outrun me is because he's shooting people with a marker.
Played tournament paintball a whole lot.
Oh, yeah.
He was good on the
really
paintball field as a paintball player. He was a killer.
Yeah, before one of the anti-aircraft units could shoot him, we were taking out 60 or 70 people at a time. I mean, we were just lawn mowing parts of the field. And that's when I discovered the glory of helicopter gunships, which kind of came one of my trademarks for a couple games later. Because we just lawn mowed people as fast as we could absolutely go. And Our side, we ended up, because I was playing a character, the whole point of my character during that game was to make an alliance with the humans and go jack up the Zerg. That's the only thing we were supposed to do. And if you followed the actual storyline of the game, my guy and some Terrans became their own faction that just fought the Zerg, and my character ended up suiciding himself into the big Zerg boss at the end of part of the story. But,
right. And in this time in the game, the people who were role-playing were more concerned about the storyline than they were the actual game itself. They played the game, and they used the game to their advantage, but everybody was cognizant on the storyline.
Yeah, so every
advancing
time I went
the
down to
storyline.
base, I never threatened anybody, even though they built a special building to keep me in. It was called Indy's house. They would shove me in the Terran base when I would go down there, and then they would post up 2 missile launcher guys in case I tried to get all a little aggressive. But by lunchtime or by dinner battle, we'd made a deal that the Terrans and the Protoss would team up, and we were going to jack the Zerg on dinner. And that's exactly what happened right until the Terrans shot us all in the back. And, yeah, that didn't end so well.
Are you ready for me to tell my part of this story?
Oh, God. Go ahead.
Because I can fill in a lot of blanks on that.
Oh, God. So,
very quickly. Yeah, this was my second game ever. Second time I've ever – and I've never played rec ball. I played one day of rec ball in 19 years. Never played a tournament. I've been to a couple. But I played one scenario game in Paintball, Arkansas, which was Big T's game. That was the very first scenario game I ever played was Tommy Hill, Big T. And then my next game – my friend who got me into paintball, Gordon Gregson, he was like, hey, we need to drive down to Texas and play this Viper game. There's lots of people. There's going to be like 600 people there. You know, we need to go down here and play that. And I was like, cool. And, you know, I was still very much, you know, I got out of the Marine Corps in 97. So, you know, I'm, 3-4 years out the Marine Corps or 2 or 3 years out the Marine Corps. So I'm still very much that military mindset. And I find this group online called the PBLI, the Paintball Light Infantry. And, man, I was like, hell yeah, they had patches and they had all this shit. And I met this guy online on Warpig. His name was Buffalo. You know, he was this big black dude who was prior military. So that's what I find funny when everybody's like, oh, black people are finally getting representation in scenario paintball. It's like, dude, this guy was a general at a 3-way 600-player game. Everybody knew who he was. I don't know what you're talking about.
At the time.
Right. I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. This guy, I mean, he was my general. So when I met him,
they were winning.
Well, when I met him, he was like, he recruited a lot of what would now, I guess, be called MilSim players. So his base security was actually run by a team out of Louisiana called the Flag Raiders. And 3/4 of the Flag Raiders were Vietnam vets. They were just old, crusty fucking vet-type people and Cajuns.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, I know. So you're talking
and they were Buffalo's base security. That was the reason why it was so military. You came to his base, you were on your knees. You had 2 guns in the back of your head. The entire time you're talking to the commander. You're on your belly, crawling if you want to talk to him. You know, they were
Oh, I didn't.
They were
I went
base. Right, but you did see that. I mean, you saw them do Phil like that. You saw them do Jester, which Jester was.
I actually never did. I didn't see any of that because they put me in a little house they built for me.
Yeah, I know. I was the one who helped build the house because I was one of the field commanders for Buffalo. Because he found out I was in the Marine Corps and gave me his little PBLI patch and made me one of the field commanders. And I was actually tasked with taking on the Protoss. That was my area of the field. So I'm very much well aware of your box. Right, but I'm very much well aware of your box. Your box was there for a reason.
Yeah,
that whole
I never saw anything
2 air things, you're talking to the guy that came up with that idea of how to negate you as much as we could. That was the reason why when Diane, after Blitzkrieg turned and Diane became a carrier, shit that we did, that was the reason why people took all their carriers off, because me and a bunch of guys exploited a few things to take carriers down.
Let's
but because of that, let me get back to the quick story.
Quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so sun goes down. The fake ranger, I don't even want to say that dick's name. The fake ranger injures himself. Me and my team captain go with him to the hospital. By the time
No,
I come
we
back,
at least need to talk about it. You're talking about Jedi from not Jedi. From
Jawa.
Regiment 214, Jawa.
Yeah.
And what he means by a guy, fake ranger. This is a guy who convinced Texas paintball players that he was an actual ranger in the Army at Black Hawk Down when all that shit went down and everything else.
That's not the stories I got. The stories I got from him were Iraq. You know the special ops that ended up hiding in that bunker?
Mm-hmm.
And then they had the big chase across the desert. He was in that, according to the stories told me.
Right. And then he moved into, he was also in Somalia, and he was in this and all of that. Yeah, it was all bullshit. Yeah. He was never in anything.
Oh, yeah.
On top of that, he was also ripping women off and stealing money. He was one of these, there's a name for him in World War II where it was con men who pretended to be military and would prey on women. That's why he wound up being, he's been in and out of prison multiple times.
Oh, Lord. If anybody's curious, you can Google him. There's a website dedicated to him that some woman made.
Oh, yeah.
Well, either way.
From all the women that he fucked over, he eventually reaped that. But for the longest time, he was very well known and respected in Texas paintball.
Yeah. And then, so we get back, and all hell is broken loose. Somebody has brain tumors and has been lit up. All of a sudden, now there's a giant coup on the Terran side. Everything has fallen apart. My character's already suicided, so basically the story's over for me. That was before.
Are you ready for that story?
But
because I can tell you exactly what happened on that. Are you ready?
Okay. Yeah, go for it.
All right. So simply, Jester, which was Pac-Man's daughter, female player, a member of Blitzkrieg. Blitzkrieg was working. Wiz from the Brotherhood was the XO for Buffalo. Mm-hmm. As I told you, the Flag Raiders were very aggressive with role players. Well, there was a situation. There was a situation where Phil and Jester came to the base, and they had them on their bellies with their knees in their backs, with guns to their heads while they were talking, and they were both in tears. And I think Phil at that time was like 17 years old or something like that, and I think Jester was maybe 18, 19, 20. So they were really young kids. Oh, yeah. But, you know, in their mind, and if I'm not mistaken, it was after you had suicided them or done something because you got pissed off to the big thing. There was something you or another one of the role players had done at the base that had them on edge, and they were not letting. And they knew that in the storyline, both Jester and Phil's character turned. They knew eventually they were going to turn and go to work for the Zerg. In the storyline, they knew that was going to happen. And so because of that, they didn't trust them. So while the rest of Blitzkrieg was there in the base, the Flag Raiders were on them. So after that happened with Jester, because after they got done letting them talk to the general, they basically executed them. They shot them in the back of the head right there with their knees in their back. They went off the field to Viper.
They ejected from the field for assault at that point.
Yeah,
you can't put your knee in somebody's back.
But again, back in the day, that kind of stuff was not, you know, even the drinking. That was why Viper. That was why Viper put in the no drinking thing was because of this thing. But hold on, let me tell you why. So here's what happened. They went Blitzkrieg. They went to Viper. Blitzkrieg did, and Viper. It's Viper's game. Viper's running the game as a promoter, but Viper is still an active member of Blitzkrieg, a team that's playing his game. They went to Viper and said, hey, we've talked with Wiz of the Brotherhood. He's agreed we're going to take out Buffalo, and we're going to take out the Flag Raiders, and we're going to stage a coup, and we want your buy-off on this. And he had Wiz from the Brotherhood in there with him. Wiz? Yes.
Oh, okay.
Wiz and all of them. Wiz, Pac-Man, Mother, they all went into the RV, and Flash, who was this time on Followers of the White Rabbit, which was Queen Bunny, the chick with the brain tumor. So Flash was at this time, Flash was the head writer for Viper. He worked for Viper directly. So Flash had an attitude on his shoulder. Right, he had an attitude on his shoulder with that kind of thing too. So after Blitzkrieg went to Viper and got buy-off, Blitzkrieg then came and dropped the base. They came and dropped the Terran base. How I met Patrick Pac-Man McKinnon was him sticking a gun to the back of my head and pulling the trigger, telling me to get the fuck off his field. And I was just like, what the fuck? This is Blitzkrieg. This is one of these big teams. I got told to do this. And I look up, and Kronos, Dave Henderson, is on top of the tower taking people out right and left. So Blitzkrieg dropped their own base to stage this coup. And the Brotherhood and Blitzkrieg then set up a perimeter around the base. Now, what they should have done when they did that was take Buffalo and the Flag Raiders off the field. They didn't do that.
Yeah.
They let them reinsert. So when I'm standing at the dead zone, and I have no idea any of this shit's gone down, I just know somebody shot the piss out of us, and Buffalo is standing there going, we've got to take our base back. Those motherfuckers shot us. Everybody, strip off your armband tape. We're shooting anybody in front of us. I don't care who it is. And that's when you came back out, was because what had happened is it was starting to get dark, and there were 55, 60 people on a 200-player side attacking 15 people in a base.
Yeah, Civil War.
And they had just got done shooting these people ugly, and then these people had convinced the other 30 people that had came in, these motherfuckers on the field are doing us dirty, drop you, we're shooting them until they can't take anymore. There was no control anymore. The refs are just like lost. And they opened the insertion window, and we assaulted this fucking base. And most of these people on this team, like I said, were military. So, we're like, fuck it. You get shot in the face. You're a grown adult. You came out here and pushed us out. And so they started shooting, lighting everybody up. And they shot Bunny in the head. She didn't like getting shot in the head. She started screaming she had a brain tumor. Then Flash is trying to stop the game. But here's the thing. Flash was part of the group that dropped the base. So nobody wants to hear what the fuck he's got to say. And he's screaming, stop shooting, stop shooting, stop shooting. And they're all screaming, fuck you, you dropped the base. And that's when he does this other famous phrase that he screams out, my name's Flash, I work for Viper, stop shooting now. And by then the refs came in, they pulled everybody off the field, had this huge fucking stand down, and we're all in Viper's RV getting the riot act read. And I'm just standing there going, I don't know what the fuck is going on. I just showed up, got stuck in this position. This motherfucker shot me in the back of the head. These motherfuckers dropped the base. I'm just a fucking player, dude. I don't know nothing about your fucking politics or who this is and all that. They wound up kicking the Flag Raiders off the field, and they wouldn't let them go back out and play because most of them had been drinking.
I was told they were very drunk, like slurring drunk. The captain was slurring drunk by the time he got back to the RV. Oh yeah, dude, they were tanking it up. But again, it wasn't illegal yet according to Viper rules to drink. You could drink it and play. Yeah. They still do that at Living Legends and other games like that where people drink and go play. I mean, it is what it is, but that was the game that broke that. And then the Brotherhood and Blitzkrieg went and played for the Protoss. Yeah, I was told they were on my team the next morning. I got back. I was told that about what happened and that these people were drunk. These people are going to be on your team the next morning. And I was like, fucking okay, we got extra people.
Oh yeah. Trust me, dude. Like I said, I mean, I won MVP that game from Buffalo, and I felt so. This will tell you how I was. This will tell you how much I wasn't TB at the time. I felt so bad. I went to give the award back because I didn't want it to be tainted by all this shit that went down. I mean, when I first met Patrick and Diane, that was the first game I met Patrick and Diane. And then the very next game was at Paintball, Arkansas, where I was generaling, and they asked me to general, and I'm like, you just shot me in the back of the fucking head and told me get the fuck off your field, bitch, and now you want me to general one of your games? The fuck?
Well,
and we'll talk about that fucking game because that's the whole lightning rod of Lemuria and all that other bullshit that fucking went down.
Oh.
But yeah, people need to realize that no TB, this was TB baby days. There wasn't even a fucking TV yet. I didn't know shit.
Oh yeah.
I just showed up and played the fucking game. So go ahead. You walk back in the field's crazy. I just wanted to let people know what the fuck went down. and that the game promoter was well aware of it. The game promoter was behind it. I mean, the field refs knew what the fuck was going on. Nobody stopped it. It was, and they didn't stop it. While in hindsight it should have been stopped, at the time,
Definitely.
that was just how shit was. You handled your shit on the field.
Oh,
you know what I'm saying?
A quick one at this game. Oh, yeah, well, let's talk about pistols for a second. For all those idiots running around who think they're pistol masters now, oh, the pistols are a new thing, they're fucking not, okay? Not Bob from the Mayberry Marauders brought out the Sidekick Semi way the hell back in fucking 1999, 2000. So we were running around with just pistols long before that. And before that, we were running around with AGD sidearms and all kinds of crap. So the pistols, not even remotely close to new a thing. Sidekick Semis, pretty awesome marker. Shot a lot of people with it that game. Just got to get that off my chest. You were.
Well, it was made.
We were both Mayberry
It was
Marauders.
built. Well, first it was Goob and Gome from the Mayberry Marauders who came up because Goob is the one who sold it. Now, for people who don't know Mayberry Marauders, Mayberry Marauders was a team out of the Southeast, primarily, that they called themselves the Mayberry Marauders. And because of that, everybody that was on the Mayberry Marauders had a Mayberry name, except for Andy. Because at this time, when they would do base security or they would be involved with the command structure of a game, they would make a coded map. And the coded map would be different objectives in Mayberry. So there'd be the jail, there'd be Andy's house, there'd be Aunt B's house, there'd be Cora's house. And they would change the names of this, so as they talked across these radios, it was all in code based on Mayberry. And then when you had the different Mayberry names, because the Andy was always the general. So if you talked about Andy, that was the general.
And to clarify to the audience, this Mayberry is the only time TB and Indy have ever been on the same paintball team.
As short-lived as it was for me.
Yes. Because,
most people who know the Mayberry Marauders will swear up and down they cannot believe I was ever a member of that team because everybody on that team was nice and kind and all of that I am not known to be.
Their reputation was a really good, like a hard-playing scenario team at the time. And I joined thinking I'm joining this hard-playing scenario team when it's actually a party team. Because, Not Bob introduced me to Venison for the first time. Amazing. Thank you, Not Bob. But I don't know why you left. I eventually got kicked off the Mayberry Marauders. And
I went to Blitzkrieg.
We'll get back to that in a little bit.
Yeah, I went to Blitzkrieg. That's why I went from the Mayberry Marauders party team to Blitzkrieg, which at that time we were rebuilding into the pre-Thunderstruck, but I mean one of the most successful teams in scenario at that time. I mean that was the first ever scenario team fully sponsored by a major manufacturer. Blitzkrieg was completely sponsored by Airgun Designs. Blitzkrieg is the reason why there's a TAC-1 EMAG.
Yeah.
The night vision on the ads for the Airgun Designs TAC-1, that would be Barry's night vision, Nudie, the woman that was here before. I did the ads, and it was in my magazine. I mean, I have the number 2 tactical or TAC-1 mag that was ever made, and I had the very first TAC-1 EMAG that was ever made.
Now, apparently,
the stories with Tom and all of that are great. So keep going, though. Mayberry.
Mayberry was just a fun party team to be on. Shit didn't work out in the long run. We'll circle back to that in a little bit. But so I've got sometime at 2000 to 2001-ish, I've got a gap of I don't even know the sequence of events that would happen. We went to Kansas for the first time. Let's talk about Kansas real quick. Is Drop Zone not one of the greatest scenario fields you ever played?
Drop Zone is a very motherfucking interesting field. I wouldn't necessarily say it's the best. I can tell you this. I had my best ever night game at that field with a pump Sheridan. That was Bobby Goggins. He introduced me to a pump gun at night with night vision.
For people who've never been to Drop Zone, you go to Lawrence, Kansas, you drive out to the middle of completely flat cornfields, you turn down a dirt road, and then all of a sudden you're in this 100-foot valley. It's a paintball field, and it's amazing.
It's a meteor crater. So if you've never been to Kansas, imagine the flattest piece of land that you have ever seen for miles. There is absolutely there is absolutely nothing. It is completely flat. And there is so much corn everywhere you go. I remember the first time we went to Drop Zone with Barry, me and Nudie were riding up. We're driving down, and she is like, I swear to God, it's Children of the Corn.
It was.
And you're riding, there's nothing. And then you come up, and you notice there's this big hole. And you're like, okay, that's interesting. And then you drive up to this hole, and you look down, and for like it's about 85 acres. It's like an 85-acre meteor crater that's been stepped, of course. So you have multiple levels to play, and then you get down to the bottom, there's this big creek that runs through it. So you've got three different levels of fucking fields to play on. And at every level, he had 2 or 3 speedball fields. So you're playing up and down these fucking nasty-ass granite hills. I mean, you're not sliding through sand. You're climbing rocks. And that's also that field is the one that Warren got the gnome story. And I'll tell that story when I have Barry back on with the gnome and the sliding down one of those rock hills. But, yeah, I mean, Drop Zone is a very interesting field. I can tell you this about Drop Zone. When it gets dark and there's no moon out, it's really dark down at the bottom of that fucking crater. And when you have Gen 3 night vision, it's really cool.
Yeah. See, I'll lay it out there. I'm not a great scenario player. I've never really been. I can role play. I know the basics. I'm not a master of scenario. I'm not a great scenario general. I went 1 for 2. The only victory I ever had was against the fake ranger in Kansas. Half my team was on literally trucker speed or trucker meth, and we won that one. But yeah,
you're also not a very good night player. I'm just saying.
I'm not a night player.
I still remember the first time you put night vision on, me and Epic sitting and laughing on our radios watching you fucking walk through the woods like Darth Vader when he just came off the fucking, after getting put in a suit of armor. Because you had not figured out the depth and the loss of the field of depth, so you're like prancing like a pony with your feet up in the air. I can still see it. Dude, I can still close my eyes and see you in a green hue with us having our IR illuminators on you, just laughing, trying to figure out which one of us is going to shoot you. And we're so busy laughing that Gary Neckers is just getting mad as shit, and finally he's the one that shoots you. Because me and Epic and Cole, we just couldn't. We were so busy laughing.
Well, let me share real quick. That was the most terrifying moment of my life because I'm running around with Gary Necker's night vision. I'm trying not to smash it into a tree. And what happened was I was with all the night vision players. I got separated. I found this really dark hole, and I sat in it for a while, and I shot some people in the back, and that was fun. But then I was like, I got to leave this spot. And the whole night vision group is working their way down in this one line, and Gary's on the end of it. And I stumble my way sideways into the just looking straight down the line of the other team. So I shoot one, and I'm starting to work my way over. And then I look to my right, and I just see this figure standing there. And I saw this laser light on the ground. And I still vividly remember this, and I'll never forget it till the day I die. It rips along the ground, and then it runs up my leg, up my chest, stops on my face, and then all the paintballs show up behind it. And then I just hear on the radio Gary Necker's voice go, "Shot Indy."
Yep.
Just flat, didn't give a shit. And that was it. And that
Dude, there was a time, I mean, I would love to be,
I
mean, when I get Epic on this, it's really going to be awesome. I mean, I tell people playing at night is, especially around the games that were centered around night play, where you actually had night vision shit to do, and there were people on the other end of the night vision who played. I mean, especially with Gary. I mean, Fox Farmer, unfortunately not with us anymore. I mean, the most consummate night player I've ever seen. I mean, you would think that man invented fucking night vision and playing with it. I mean, just the sheer thoughts that he have. I mean, I still remember we played a game where it was me, Z, Viper, Joe Stabeck. We all had Gen 3 night vision, and Gary Neckers. And we're hitting the base. We're raping the fuck out of the base with our night vision and all the players and everything like that. And Diane, as Gary Neckers goes off the field and he's reinserting, he's talking to Diane, she convinces him to go to the other side because they had no night vision. And so Gary Neckers hunts me, Viper, Z, and Joe Stabeck, and all of us knew how to play at night, especially Viper and Z, because Viper and Z were blitzkrieg guys that had been using night vision even longer than we had. And Gary Neckers one-shotted us. Not lit us up like you did. I mean, one shot. You knew what it was. You're sitting there and you're talking, and all of a sudden it's like whack, one shot right in the head. And you knew you better call it, because if you didn't, there were going to be about 50 more coming right after it.
Oh, yeah. That same game, me and Viper, I'm feeling like Superman at this point with Gary's extra set. He had 2 sets of Gen 3, and I'm using his extra set. I'm feeling like Superman at this point. So Viper and I go off. We're walking through this spot. Viper's a great night player. I'm walking with my new Superman night vision, and all of a sudden this voice just goes, "Who are y'all?" And I'm like, oh, shit, this dude just got the drop on both of us while we're wearing night vision. So Viper talks to him for a little bit, and then we get into a good report, and then Viper barrel tags the guy, and the guy's like, God damn it, I knew that voice. I should have just shot y'all. Yeah, he should have. Because after that, we went and the 2 of us basically threw some smoke at their base and caused their own flashlights to shine back at their eyes. And then Gary showed up, and we shut down their base for like half an hour, 45 minutes. With just the 3 of us. So, yeah, night vision goes a long way, but it's still no substitute for skill with it.
No, not at all. I tell people that all the time. There are so many ways to take on night vision and take night vision out. You know, smoke, that's one way. Night vision doesn't look through smoke. Shadows, that's another one. If you hide in a shadow, it's not going to see. I mean, you have to use an IR illuminator. And the truth is, if you're running Gen 1, Gen 2 in a passive mode, meaning you're just sitting and waiting at a base, you will see the Gen 3 night vision players coming. I mean, they run IR illuminators. I mean, because as I try to explain to people, because I've had lots of people try to compare night vision being an advantage the same as having a high-end paintball gun. And I'm like, that is completely wrong. I'm like, all night vision does is take light, ambient light, and magnify it. I said, it allows me to see better than you. I'm like, that's all. I still have to shoot you. I still have to be accurate enough to hit you. I still have to be able to have a trigger control that I don't light you up at night, because that's frowned upon too. And then I have to be able to get away, because a lot of people that you shoot at night are immediately going to turn and shoot at you and try to one-for-one you. So you've got to be able to put the paint up and then get in a different position to get them off of you until they call themselves out. And whereas you can give a 10-year-old a gun that shoots 25 balls a second, and he can hold down a bunker. I'm like, I can give that same 10-year-old a set of night vision, and he wouldn't be able to do shit with it. So, no, there is a definite skill set to use a night vision. And it is as someone who used night vision in the military, there's not a lot of similarities in how they're used. I mean, it's really not. I mean, it's really more, it would probably be more like a law enforcement use of night vision than a military one, just because of the up-close tactical style shooting that it uses. And then the guys who got really good with the night vision. I mean, everything. I mean, when you quit hunting people at night because they're not wearing night vision, that's when you know you've started playing your own game again. When you've got night vision players on both sides that don't do anything but hunt each other and try to one-up the person on the other side with Gen 3 night vision, you know, everything from – well, and you saw some of that where you would build honeypots. You'd see us out there with the IR Silooms or IR Flashers. And you would set trails to where you would bring people in and then shoot the fuck out of them. I mean, we did all kinds of night play shit that you can't do now.
Yeah, he would take IR squeeze light and click it and just clip it to a branch. So if you had a good breezy game, you had this bouncing light that looked like somebody walking along with their illuminator on by accident, and everybody that was new with night vision would attack it like a moth on a flame, and then you shoot them. You don't even need night vision to pull that trick off. You just set it up and sit in the shadow.
Yeah, that's what Nightmare Tango did for the longest time before they had night vision. I mean, I tell people that I played against Dave Cilio and Nightmare Tango when we had night vision and they didn't, and they still won about a third of the time. I mean, it got bad enough that Dave and them eventually got night vision because of playing against Blitzkrieg at night, but they were still they were more successful than any other team out there for having no night vision. I still remember when Nightmare Tango brought they had a game finder. Oh my God, that was some funny shit.
You're gonna have to tell people who Nightmare Tango is, because I'm gonna have to rewind.
I can't believe that shit. I mean, I'll just say real quick. Yeah. We'll touch on Nightmare Tango here in a minute. But Nightmare Tango is Dave Cilio. They were at that time a 5-man team, probably the best hands down tactical scenario team out there. I don't think there's been anybody ever as good or better. I mean, they actually trained every day or every weekend. They were at the gym together.
Spiro told me about the drills they did.
Oh yeah, they lived together and breathed together and everything else. And because of that, and Dave, most of them were military or military wannabes. You know, Dave is a cavalry scout, real deal. I mean, Dave's like, hell, I don't know. I think he's like 48 or 49 now. And, I mean, he's still in better shape than most 22, 23-year-old dudes. I mean, the dude is still ripped.
He's a freaking nature.
And it's all natural.
Yeah.
He's also only like 5'2" or some shit like that.
He's taller than that.
And I love Dave. Don't get me wrong. And I got to say it. You know, Dave and Norbert eventually left Nightmare Tango when they were the only ones left. And they came on to Thunderstruck. And that generation of Thunderstruck, where we ran a command unit and a support element and an assault element,
that was
probably the
best played
with
that generation
ever. And
terrifying.
I mean, because Dave, you had fast runners like Dave that knew what they could do. They could run, they could hit the base or start assaulting a target. By then, the support element would show up because, you know, Dave and his fast runners were even super fast. And once the support element come up and started laying down cover fire, the assault element started flanking. They'd hit flanks to the other side. I mean, it was like a ballet. But at this time, there was still just Nightmare Tango. And they were normally the team that was offset of Blitzkrieg because even though they didn't have night vision at the time, they were still a very effective team. At night, in the day. If I remember
right, the Nightmare Tango was part of Joint Fury.
No. Nightmare Tango was originally part of Joint Fury.
Yes.
And then they left and joined RTD, which was another mega team. I mean, Joint Fury was a mega team, and we'll talk about Joint Fury. I got that coming up in another episode. But for the people out there that don't know, Joint Fury was like the real very first mega team, which was where they took 8 teams and made one big team out of them. So you still had your individual team identity. You were still, you know, Arclight or Bid'em or Assassin's Guild. But then when you rolled together, y'all all rolled up and you were Joint Fury.
Oh, yeah. Well, your super old piece of trivia is there was 2 Joint Furies. There was Joint Fury and Joint Fury Southwest, which Spiro started.
Which was after Spiro moved to Arizona.
TREF 3. Yep. He started building that way back at TREF 3. And Guilty was actually part of Joint Fury Southwest. And Spiro, to this day, still owes me a patch that I paid for. But we won't go into that. Technically, I've been a member of Joint Fury Southwest, Guilty. I've been a Mayberry Marauder. I've been on Status Affection. And the very last kind of team that I played for is Friend of Thunderstruck. Otherwise, technically, I've been a solo player. I've always kind of been a solo player forever. I don't really create a monumental technical challenge when you're trying to figure out how do you beat Thunderstruck if there's only one of you and there's like 20 of them and they're all fucking awesome at different things. Which the answer is you can't. You can't unless you fucking. Well, you can't. I mean, not with one person.
I mean, again, like I try to tell people, I mean, there was a definite method to the madness. The more alphas that we put on the team that had their own specialities, the more it grew.
Methods. You literally published it, and if you published everything you were doing, but unless you could match it, you were fucked.
Right. I mean, that's why that's why we quit doing codes. We quit worrying about people listening to our radios. Because there's a quote by Dave Cilio that when he was on Thunderstruck is that the only thing worse than getting your ass beat is hearing it coming and knowing you can do nothing to stop it.
Yeah.
Because they would sit and listen to our because most people don't realize the key to success in any scenario game as a commander, and this is no bullshit, it's communication and intelligence. If you have communication, there's a key Marine Corps tenet. Communication is the key to battle. And it's a key tenet of any successful military unit. You have to be able to communicate. And my biggest success was I was able to buy 30 VHF radios. They were Viper's old ref radios. When he went to UHF. I bought all of his VHF radios super cheap. And they had 4 and 5 and 6 mile radius. These weren't these little cheap radius, you know, Motorola's that everybody was running FRS, you know, which was family, was that family radio system or whatever. It was the shit you could buy. I mean, literally, we were illegal because we were supposed to have an FCC license to run these radios.
Yeah. Okay, we got 31 minutes left. Let me kind of speed through this timeline real quick, too.
Look, we've already determined that it's going to take multiple days with some of you old-time fuckers, which is funny since you're younger than me by like 10 years. But some of you old guys, you know, y'all need 2 and 3 days.
Yeah, so we hit about 2000, 2001. That's when Viper got burnt the fuck up. Long story short, house fire broke out. He got burnt pretty bad. It was a shitty thing to happen to anybody.
Oh, yeah.
But
I remember at that time I was living with Pat and Diane, and I went and saw Viper in the hospital. And we did the charity game after he got out.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, he kind of wasn't the same after that, but he got burnt pretty fucking bad, so nobody's quite
I mean, it was like third-degree burns over like 60% of his
40%.
body or 50%? Yeah, something like that.
40%.
I know his back is pretty fucking scarred up.
Yeah, well, he was already fucked up from motorcycle accidents and shit before that, and crazy fights and whatnot. But
well, you know that's what happens when you're a DJ in a stripper club.
Yeah. Well, that was his old job. I mentioned Kansas out of the way. Yeah, there was. I don't know. You remember the one game? I don't even remember what it was. Some MIB shit. We were running around, and by the way, the worst thing you can do in a full Texas summer is get drunk the night before and then run around in a 3-piece suit and then wear a goddamn aluminum foil alien potato costume. So we're the MIB.
Well, it
at
depends
this game.
on because there was an MIB game before I played, but Nudie was there for it. But then the second game that you were MIB was when I was the XO for Nudie. So which MIB game are you talking about? When you were the first MIB or the second MIB?
Did I wear a potato costume at your game?
I don't know. There were people out there wearing there were staff infection members out there wearing mop suits and EPA environmental cleaning suits.
Oh, I don't even think I was
this game was like the continuation of that game was the reason why you were in it. And this was like, because that was why Nudie was the general, is because she was the wife of the previous character who did it.
Now, the previous
and they had killed the previous character, and she was the wife of it, and I was his son. So that was my big battle cry on my card was, "You killed my dad, you bastards." Viper had it wrote down. I had to say that. Mm-hmm.
I think I wrote
I know
that
y'all
shit,
did.
but I don't remember.
Mm-hmm.
Well, amen. Crazy time. I remember most of that shit.
Yeah, because people don't realize that, again, it got to a point where promoters and the staff members wrote cards specifically for individuals.
I've written at least 5,000 cards.
Right, but you know what I'm talking about, where, this is going to be Nudie's. We're not talking about normal role-player cards. I'm talking about special characters. Nudie's going to be this. Indy, write this card. And you would write a card for her that she would get. There would be inside shit in the card that she would get because you knew who she was.
Oh, yeah. There was one game where I took the Dog Soldiers cards and I tailored them to, let's just call them Kill Whitey cards. It was these Indians who were pissed off at the treatment of the U.S. government. They were all really well written. It's probably the best batch of fiction writing I've ever done. They were so good they actually kept the cards after the game.
Right.
But yeah, if I knew you, I tailored the card specifically to you, and you had to know to look for it when you got your team packet. And you could pretty much figure out who your card was for really quick.
Yep.
And then
which is why there were so fucking many of you that were staff infection. I mean, it eventually got to where what? There were 7 or 8 of you?
Yeah, but only 2 of us ever wrote. Only me and Bullwinkle wrote for staff infection. That was it. Everybody else was just a hangout person.
Right, or a role player.
They were just doing other office shit.
Right.
Yeah, and
for people that don't know, staff infection was Viper. So Viper, a lot of people that if they played a Viper game, they realize that Viper really, really, really loves third factions.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why he loves the third faction is a level of control. Because the third faction is supposed to be the producer's fuckstick. That's what I called it.
Mm-hmm.
So they're, especially if the third party can be your staff members. So y'all are meeting months before the game talking about games, and you're talking about storyline arcs, and y'all are writing cards, and y'all are going, based on the stories that you've seen as players, if Choctaw gets this is one of the things he might try. And people don't realize that when you're writing a story, you're sitting with the promoters and your staff, and you're working all this out. And so,
oh, yeah.
So because he liked to use a third faction, the Staff Infection was his official team of Viper
like a year.
people. Well, yeah, that was because people like you or Emmett, utilized Viper's dick for your own ego.
Yeah, maybe.
You and your fucking gunship in the Shadow Wars game. That's what broke Viper.
Hey, I was playing as a regular player. Kiss my ass on the Shadow Wars game. I played the fucking game from the beginning for a side. So you were
not at fucking Phobos. You and Emmett were
Phobos
third
part
faction.
Of Shadow Wars?
Yes.
Phobos wasn't part of Shadow Wars.
That was Shadow Wars, yes, sir. That was the final game of Shadow Wars, the Twilight Zone of Shadow Wars.
What does that have to do with Shadow Wars? Oh, well.
Because it was it was because he built it up to where the big green nasties were going to come out after they built everything. That was his big thing it was terrorists and all of that, and so you had a group of terrorists, and then you had a group of law enforcement, and every game was the terrorist trying to either get a nuclear bomb, or the terrorist trying to get this, or the terrorist trying to get that. Okay. And then the other side, you had the military and police trying to stop them.
Okay.
So while the game was kind of a game that depended on the previous one, the storyline allowed it to where it could be set in a different thing. It's the same characters.
Like a 007 thing.
Right, same character, same thing. It's just this time you're at this field, so it's this kind of game. When we were at fucking Forney. That was when they were going after the nuclear bomb. Yeah.
For those who don't know what Shadow Wars was that continuous series, 5 games. Every game, your character, if you participated in it, you were awarded points, and you could use that points to upgrade as your character, and your character continually upgraded. So eventually, by the end of the series, you could be pretty badass depending on how you stacked your points.
And how you got those points was by Staff Infection members handing out coins based on you role-playing or doing some cool move, or just if they liked you, you'd get a coin. And so because of that, a lot of the named players, because here was the other thing that really, people are going to hear me get pissy about, because this is the whole reason why Phobos went down the way it did. First and foremost, to get to be this role, to be a role character in this game, you had to be a Viper Elite member. And Viper Elite was this program where you paid $50 a year, and you got a Viper patch, and you got premium paint, and you got to go in line first. Basically this club that, I'm a Viper Elite member. And
second-tier membership.
Right. And so to be a role player, anyone could be a role player, but if you wanted to be a role player who experienced or leveled up, you had to be a Viper Elite member.
Oh, yeah.
And so because of that, most of the Viper Elite members were part of the inside crew that hung out at Viper House and Viper's Game, and so all of Staff Infection knew them. And so you guys would power level people that you liked or whatever. I mean, it is what it is. I mean, that was the way the game went. Well, you didn't, but Emmett did. Dragon did.
Shit. I didn't know that. Well,
yeah. How do you think Nudie got to be a? Look, by Phobos, Nudie was a sniper, engineer, pilot, intel op, basically, she could kill you if she saw you and heal you if she saw you.
And then fly away with your dead body. That's pretty hilarious.
Exactly. Exactly. And that was all from that crazy shit. But yeah.
Well,
so back to what you were saying. I just wanted people to understand what Staff Infection was.
Yeah. Well, suffice to say, there's been what they call a linear regression of gameplay. The complexity of it since then, because games have just gotten simpler compared to more advanced when we did Shadow Wars and then we did RTS. And for those who don't know what RTS was, it's just a real-time strategy game. If you've ever played a video game where you have to capture a point for points over time to win the map, same shit. You
exactly. Here's what a lot of people may not know about RTS. Right. RTS, well, the back end of it. So in most scenario games, you have mission, counter mission, or you have specific missions done on the fly. We'll talk about that as we get these promoters in. However, RTS was actually a program written with a back end that actually worked with the radios so that when you took a flag station, a timer started. And that timer, once that
fancy
timer
Excel
reached 0, the flag went to the straight up, and then a point total started, and a money started. And there were certain objectives. So there would only be one sniper school. So if you wanted a sniper OS, you had to go hold the you had to take the sniper school, and then you had to hold it. And the longer you held it, the better sniper and sniper upgrades you got. But there was only one sniper school.
And then apparently there was some loophole in the rules that you and Pac-Man figured out to end the actual first RTS game off the break. Like you just ran to their base, blew it up, and the game was over because they had no engineers.
That's happened several times.
A little bit.
Yeah, that's happened several times. The funny thing about that is that it has happened to Kerry Rosenberry 3 times, and he has yet to learn his lesson that if I'm on the field and I have a demo card, you better have a fucking engineer. The very first time it happened was Clash of the Titans.
Yeah.
Where it was Pac-Man versus Viper, and Kronos was the third faction, and it was Blitzkrieg versus Blitzkrieg, with Blitzkrieg as a third faction on a game run by a Blitzkrieg member whose ultimate ref was a Blitzkrieg member, and all of them had egos the size of a fucking 18-wheeler, and the team disintegrated after that game.
So Clash of the Titans.
Because Viper was not happy he lost to Pac-Man.
No. Clash of the Titans, I work for Viper, but I'm fucking Pac-Man's XO. So
you remember
Viper
that game?
Takes me out to, absolutely. Viper takes me out to Benihana's, right? Feeds me all this dinner, gets me drunk, and then as soon as we walk out of the restaurant, he calls Pac-Man and says, I just bought your XO an expensive dinner and got him drunk, and hangs up the phone just to get the look on my face like, you motherfucker.
Yep.
And then that same game, I saw 2 crazy things. First, Pac-Man leaves me in charge of the base to go off-field because he had to get some food or something. And then you remember the load. People who don't know what loads are. Load was a 32-barrel
Do I remember the load?
Mine.
Fucking really? Do I remember the load?
Of course you do. The crowd I'm talking to out there might not. So 32-barrel Claymore mine with a wireless switch. And we have
32 barrels. Hold on,
to,
let me rephrase it.
Yeah.
32 barrels holds 6 paintballs per barrel. The barrel, think of it as a box with 32 barrels on the front. And each barrel has a plate, or there's a big plate over these barrels, and you can actually move the barrels in and out to make a dispersal pattern. So you can make it as big as you want it to be or as small as you want it to be. And then it had a switch, and you turn the switch on, and when you hit that button, it shot 288 paintballs all at once, all in one area.
So I'm left in Pac-Man's base by myself with nothing but a load switch in my hand to defend myself, and the load sitting right next to the door. And then Pac-Man comes back, and I don't recognize it's him, and my finger is pushing the switch halfway down before I realize it is, so I almost blasted his balls into another dimension.
Right.
Which
because that was a great tactic that we used with the load and believe it or not, you say what you want. Here's the truth, dude. I had the load. I was using the load at the game where I was Captain Hook. It was also the very first game that Viper showed back up after having his surgery or his burn. And he was wearing armor, but his back was really, really, really tender still. And Roy with the Knights, which that story will come up later, they finally dropped my base. Now, I'm in my base, and I had already blasted Bullwinkle, because Bullwinkle was fucking Peter Pan. So he wasn't the general. What was Roy's wife? Buttercup. She was the general because she was Wendy, and I was Captain Hook.
Yeah. And
so because Bullwinkle was Peter Pan, you couldn't kill him. And what the hell was his damn... CJ, Casper Jr. Remember that fucker?
Yeah.
He was the crocodile. So because he was the crocodile, he's always fucking with me at my base. And dude, I had that load sitting on a chair, and you had to touch this. You had to touch the wheel of the ship to blow up the base. So if you touched the wheel and said all dead, the base was blown. Well, in front of that wheel was my load. So before you got to touch that wheel, you're taking all of this from neck to knee. And you had to go this little hallway to get to it. And so the barrels are all pointed in. So in a space of about 3 feet wide and about 4 feet tall, there's like 380 paintballs coming at you all at once at 280 feet per second.
That should hurt.
And CJ, I'm sitting there with my finger on the trigger because you can see inside the netting. And I went, CJ, don't come in here. And he went, what? I went, I've got the load in here, dude, and it's loaded. Don't come in here. If you come in here, I'm going to make you famous. And he looks at the ref, and the base ref's like, dude, he's telling you not to go in there. And he's like, well, I want him dead. And he's like, okay. And he took 3 steps down that tunnel, and I unloaded. And even, you know it's bad when the ref goes, ooh, that had to hurt, dude.
Yeah.
And, I mean, he dropped. And I just was like, I told you. I wasn't fucking joking. But that game actually had a surrender. Roy, after they heard that story, the Knights took my base at the end, toward the end of the game. And my base had not been dropped the entire game, and they were determined they were going to drop my base. As they were running through the woods, they were telling me, TB, we're coming. We're going to drop your base. There's nothing you can do. And I'm like, come on in. Let's go. Bring it on in. And so finally they surround the base. Roy walks up to the door, and I went, come on in, dude. I'll make you famous. And he went, what do you mean? I went, I got 380 paintballs all at once, all for you. Come on in. And he went, you know what, dude? You're not worth it. You're not worth it, man. Fuck you, TB. We're out. And they walked off. They didn't drop my base. They left because nobody wanted to take that level of pain. So the load, while you're sitting there saying I'm sitting in a base with nothing but a load, that's a pretty formidable fucking device, dude.
Hey, man, I still feels naked if I don't got my autococker. But that same fucking game, now we're going to have to play a little grenade history. The early grenades were from Strange Ordnance, and they had a damn fuse and a goddamn explosive which blew out the end, and one of their smoke bombs went off on an airplane during air freight, and then 32 Strange Ordnance ceased to exist. And then the next thing that came along were the surgical tube grenades, which I've hated my entire life right until I saw this. Pac-Man has a motherfucking mortar, an actual mortar, to shoot these grenades, and this thing could fling them. So there's people attacking the base, and him and I
the
are
actual
laughing
big
like
boy
hell.
grenades, which is why the big boy grenades were originally built, was to be launched out of the mortars.
Yeah. So they're coming at our base, and we can't drop the mortars on them. So he just picks up the whole base plates and starts direct firing these grenades at people. And it's just like, boom, smashing into bunkers and stuff. And that was the first time I thought, this shit might not be safe.
Whatever, dude. Whatever, man. That was the best, dude. You have no idea. I mean, you remember I used to run. I ran with 2 pistols, and I carried a fucking launcher. And I had a custom launcher that was built by the guys out in California. Hell, I forget who they were.
That shit was never as strong as this mortar. This mortar was blowing.
Whatever. But here's the thing, dude. You could shoot smoke. I mean, you could shoot smoke out of it. You could shoot, once the Nerf rounds came out, you could start Nerf rounding shit. But the best thing ever was
Nerf
shooting
rounds
smoke.
Are for pussies. We used to have to shoot thing with paint, okay?
I know.
You actually had to
I remember those stories.
Homemade rocket launcher with goddamn paint. We didn't have Nerf rockets back in my day. That's how old I am.
I know. I would know because I was there for that too. 12 gram loaded. You had to put a 12 gram in it. You had to put toilet paper and then a bunch of paintballs. And then another wad of toilet paper and shove it down like a fucking breech loader. And then it was they didn't have a pneumatic trigger. It was basically a damn water sprinkler turnoff valve. And you had to hit it super fast because the slower you were, the longer it wouldn't launch. I mean, this is before they even came out with people taking the damn pump regulators off of water sprinklers, the electric ones, and hooking them up to batteries to get a faster release. But, you would sit there and hold it and hit it, and the shit was notorious for not breaking. I mean, you don't remember me tormenting people? Standing there with a 12 gram on a helicopter, and they're like, call it. I'm like, no, shoot me, because you couldn't barrel tag them. You had to shoot them, and paint had to break. And I'm like, shoot me. Oh, you don't want me to shoot you? Yeah, I do. Shoot me. And then they go, and you're like, ooh, it didn't come out or it didn't go. And, I mean, there's been so many times I'd hold up a 12 gram and go, damn, if you just had one more of these, if you just had one more 12 gram, you might be able to get me. Yep.
So
I mean, I remember Georgia one time, me holding up a 12 gram going, can you get this 12 gram, get it loaded, and get me before I get to your base? Let's find out. Okay. And I threw a 12 gram and took off running.
Speaking of 12 minutes left, I got to declare that I am the greatest sword fighter to ever play a scenario game. I'm just going to throw that out there. I am the undefeated king of what they used to call the wackadoo. See, people don't know back in the day when the scenario wasn't violent enough, we actually took 1-inch PVC, stuck pool noodles over them, and beat on each other. And I am completely undefeated in that, and I will still take a challenge any day of the week. so the first time I have to do that, there's this prop that got into the game that was a sword. So as soon as you touched somebody, they were out. And this one side.
Well, let's talk about. Hold on, real quick about the wackadoos. It wasn't just people out there beating on each other because you couldn't hit the head. But it was set up as SCA style rules. So if you got hit in the arm, you couldn't use that arm. If you got hit in the leg, you had to hop around. If you got hit in both legs, you had to get on your knees. If it touched your body, you were dead. And since they couldn't touch the head, if it touched the head, then the person who touched the head was dead. And they came out with this sword that if it touched you, it could touch your weapon and you were fine. But if it touched you, you died. So if it hit your arm, you were dead. If it hit your leg, you were dead. It was an automatic kill shot.
And it was
and it came in on the other side.
Contest between you and Carl had a one-on-one fight, and Carl ended up winning it. And when I looked at the prompt, I said, "Oh, that shit's too powerful to be in this game." So I had to bet literally 20-25% of the game props on a one-on-one fight versus that sword, and I still won. So fuck that.
Yep.
I'm good.
Yep. And then you took the sword and we buried that shit.
Fuck yeah, we did. I took that shit off field and it never came back. And then the second time we had to do that was I was Darth Sidious at the Episode 1 Star Wars game. And they all looked at me, and at the very first thing of the good guys meeting, they go, "Okay, everybody knows that Palpatine is Darth Sidious, right? And he becomes the Emperor." They go, "Yeah." I had to walk away from the meeting. I was like, "Oh, God damn it." But then, after all of this stuff of saying, "Oh, I'm the guy who's playing both teams," and everybody knows it, they still leave me alone in their base. For no goddamn reason whatsoever. They just all left, and I'm standing there by myself with their code book, all of their mission cards. And if it hadn't been up to my character literally not caring who won, I would have just walked off with everything and won the game. It was pretty sad. They're lucky that I was bound within the story, because if I decided that my ego was more important, they would have lost the game at that moment.
Oh, yeah.
It was only the first day.
Dude, there have been several games like that where a major role character and people don't know caused a major impact. I mean, what a lot of people don't realize is that the reason why Viper games were the way they were, and even MXS, it seems like every time a promoter started, a lot of the things that they saw done in another promoter's game that they didn't like, they made against the rules at their game. So while Wayne's games were completely, basically open, and you could do whatever if you could convince someone, because Patrick and Diane and Viper had been on the wrong side of that several times, that was why they tried not to do as much magic tree shit as Wayne, and they tried to build this infrastructure to it. And oh my God, I'm rolling my eyes right now with this. Well, in the real world, and I'm so sick of fucking in the real world, you wouldn't do this. I'm like, in the real world, in a war, you do what the fuck ever you can do. You fly a helicopter fucking where you're not supposed to. You do shit that you would not normally fucking do, because what the fuck's going to happen? You're either going to succeed and be the hero, or you're going to die.
Before we end this, because we're getting this close to the end here, we're going to talk. It's actually a kind of it's a stereotype called just as planned in anime, 40K, all those kind of fantasy games, science fiction fantasy games. And just as planned is, no matter what happens, the shit's going to happen this way. And so we're at this fucking Phobos game, which was, I guess, at the end of the Shadow War series. And we picked this team to be the third party, and then we were going to guide them.
The Knights.
They were supposed to defend the spot. Yeah, no, it was the Outlaw Crew.
No, it was the Knights. Then, it wasn't the Outlaw Crew. It was the Knights. The Knights were your third faction. You and Emmett were the CIA. Yes. Okay. It was Buttercup and the Knights. It's the entire reason how I was able to buy Viper's third faction out from under y'all, was because the Knights. The Knights was my very first MVT. They sat with me all night long in Arkansas. I had such a great relationship with the Knights, they would do anything for me. And after you guys let me rephrase it. After Emmett continuously fucked him over and you kept telling him to stop, because they were bitching at you and you were bitching to Viper, they played right into my hands of buying the third faction out from under the game promoter and his number one role player and fucking Emmett.
Okay, so let me tell the story from my perspective because it's hysterical, I think. So before the game, I've written software. We built this prop. The whole thing is supposed to be that one side is going to get this suitcase with this laptop in it, open it up, turn it on to see what it's about to get the information, and it's going to run this program which drops the shield around this base and unleashes a bunch of demons who's going to come fuck up everybody at night. So before this can even happen, motherfucking TB and Pac-Man, probably just TB for all I know, buys off all of my henchmen. Buys off all of them.
Pac-Man didn't have shit to do with that, dude. That motherfucker almost fucked it all up. Because he's the one who came to the base and dropped it before I could get there. Because I did all the wheeling and dealing.
Okay,
I'll tell you why next game. Finish your story, because there's a whole lot of shit I got to tell you about that. So go ahead. I can't do it in 5 minutes.
Yeah, from everything I can tell, TB has worked out this plan to take over the space, so they have basically an invincible island in the north part of the field that they can use as a springboard to control the rest of the field. Genius idea. Buys off all the people with me. I show up at my own goddamn base on a four-wheeler and get kidnapped in my own base by TB and Mother, who throw a towel over my head and drag me inside. And at this point, I'm laughing so hard, I'm going to piss my pants. Because it's one of the funniest and clever moves ever. But at the same time, fuck you. You're going to use this prop at the dinner battle. I don't care what y'all do. And that's exactly what happened. And then there was a lot of social fallout from that, from what I can tell, because they probably used that as leverage between the field owner, because basically like the field owner or manager was generaling, and we stood over his shoulder and made him use the prop. And
I was there for that too. Because I'm sitting there going, because here was the thing. The first thing was when I took Phobos. I asked you, how did big green monsters come out? And you're like, oh, there's this fog machine and this. And I was like, okay, cool. So we went over there and I disconnected all the shit. There's no monsters coming out. Fuck this. Then it was, and it was all tied to this laptop that y'all had everybody fighting over. And what they convinced them of is that when you got this laptop and you used it, you got the other side's missions for the rest of the game. So everybody's fighting over this laptop, not realizing that really when you get the laptop and hit the button, it drops the fucking shield and all the big green monsters come out. But both sides are convinced that if they get this laptop, they get the enemy's missions for the rest of the game. I know different because by now I dropped Phobos. Right, I dropped Phobos.
Do not press it.
Yep.
Do not press it.
It was Radar, dude. Radar was the commander. Yeah, it was Radar was the commander, and Monica was his XO. From the Norwegian trolls. And I'm sitting there telling them, dude, don't push the fucking button. We're winning. We've got an invincible base, 100 yards from the enemy base. We can insert. We've got all this shit. You need to stop, because if you don't and you hit that button, these fucking monsters are going to come out, and they're invincible all night long. Leave them the fuck alone.
But guess what, TB? Guess what? Fuck you, just as planned. That's how that works.
No. You know why? You want me to tell you why it was planned? Because the little whiny-ass bitch Carrie Rosenberry whined about how much money he spent at the game. And you heard that. You heard him say that shit on the radio when he called me there. Come on, TB. Come on. I mean, you had to find it amusing to hear a game promoter beg a fucking player to let his fucking role-playing shit go off.
Actually, I did not hear that, but there was no money involved in that. That laptop was dirt cheap.
I know.
The smoke machine was mine. The plastic tubing cost like $10.
Yeah, but he spent all this money, and there were all these things that were supposed to happen, and everything else. And while we're standing there, and he's baiting Radar into it, I'm just like, dude, if you do that, this is what's going to fucking happen. And the whole time, Viper's going, TB, shut up. TB, shut up. And finally, he hits the button, and Viper's like, boom! And next thing you know, all the goddamn little fucking green things are out fucking shooting the piss out of everybody all night long, invincible.
Yeah, just as planned.
And I'm looking at goddamn Radar going, you're a fucking dumbass. I had the whole fucking, I had the game won, you dumbass. And we still won the game. I mean, that's neither here nor there. But, the truth is there's a whole lot more that went down on that than you're aware of, because by then I had been drawn into this fucking dick measuring contest between Patrick and Pac-Man and Viper and me. And somehow I had stepped into all of that shit. And so it was this constant one-upsmanship between the three of us. How can we get over on the other one? And Patrick actually brought me to the Viper games to fuck up Viper Games. I mean, it was to take over his game. And to take on, for the longest time, I was the MXS player taking on Viper players.
Oh yeah.
I mean, that's what I got known to be.
Particularly short-sighted, because if they had not fucked each other and they had just teamed up, they could have actually built a corporation that owned fields and put on 1,000-player events across the nation, and they all would have been very profitable. They could have hidden Pac-Man behind it all, put him out of the scenes when all the allegations would have easily shown up from Google. Yeah, they fucked that one up. Nobody's an economist is the problem. Everybody's an ego person putting on a simple game, but nobody's had enough forethought. And what they needed to do was hire an economist.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, we'll pick up on that at tomorrow's call. So we're going to pick back up at 7 o'clock tomorrow. Appreciate you being on, Indy. We'll mutter through. And again, if we got to do a third show, then we'll do a fucking third show, dude. I'm not stressing this. To me, the stories and the shit that needs to be talked about is what needs to be talked about. And if somebody's going to sit and listen to 2 hours of us talking, then we'll have more.
Oh yeah, we're going to talk about Fandango and your fucking stupid spotlight.
All right, dude. Well, have a good night, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.
Later, bro.